Alright, there will be lots of spoilers in this video, so if you haven't seen the film, go watch it first, then watch this video. So, something strange happened leading up to me watching this film. I got excited. Very excited. Hyped even, which doesn't happen very often. The last film I was hyped to see was probably Avengers Endgame, and that was a couple of years ago. I was so excited for this film that I swore off the internet and social media for a few days until I saw the film, and I'm happy to say that, for the most part, I really enjoyed the film. There are a few issues which I'll get to and certain things that didn't work for me, but overall the film was great, and it's probably the best MCU Spider-Man film. So the movie begins where Far From Home's mid-credit scene ended, with the whole world knowing that Peter Parker is now Spider-Man, and that, according to Mysterio, he was responsible for the drone attack on London and the death of Mysterio. This leads to Peter, and by association MJ and Ned, being effectively cancelled by the public, or half of the public more accurately, the other half still views him as a hero. Fortunately, Daredevil comes along to save the day and bails Peter out of his legal issues. Now, I'm not fully caught up on the Netflix Marvel shows, but I have seen the first 2 seasons of Daredevil, and they are very good, and I was very excited to see Charlie Cox back in the iconic role. I especially love the moment when he catches a brick that flies through the window. Also, now that I think about it, he definitely knew that Happy was lying about stealing some Stark Tech because he would have been able to hear his heartbeat. So anyway, due to the Spider-Man controversy, MJ, Ned and Peter are all unable to get into college, and the tone of the movie is so downbeat that Peter decides to visit Doctor Strange to both help him and lighten the film's tone. It's always great to see both Doctor Strange and Wong, who is now, due to Doctor Strange being technically dead for 5 years, the Sorcerer Supreme. I love both these characters, and they've grown on me with each installment. Peter explains the situation to Doctor Strange and asks for his help, to which Strange replies, "Sure, why not?" Now, this setup for the movie is a little underbaked, and it does feel a little bit out of character for Strange to be so hastily ready to tamper with the minds of the entire universe. But whatever, I'll let it slide this time. So Strange botches the spell like a numpty and tells Peter that there's nothing he can do. His appeals must have been rejected, so that's the end of it. To which Peter replies, "Wait, I could have appealed?" Peter, arguably one of the smartest people on the planet, did not know that he could appeal. Neither did MJ or Ned, who are both smart enough to get into the same college as Peter. Okay, smart characters being stupid is fine, although I do feel their appeals would have failed anyway, but it is silly that none of them even thought to do it. So Peter chases after the appeals lady and finds her on a bridge when all of a sudden, Doctor Strange bursts out of the ground and attacks Peter in a pretty good action scene. John Watts has never been one of my favourite Marvel directors, but I think he did well in this film, when it came to the action scenes anyway. So Doc Ock wins the fight until he makes the fatal error of integrating some of Peter's spider suit nanotech into his tentacles, allowing Peter to take control of them and tie the bad doctor up. Appeals lady sees this and is like, "Peter, you're a hero. I was wrong about you. I'll make sure you and your friends get into college." And then she blows a raspberry at Doc Ock while walking away. Then the MVP of the film shows up, Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin. Now, I know people really don't like the Green Goblin costume, but I've always loved it, mainly due to nostalgia, and it's pretty great to see it again, if only briefly. Also, side note, I kept thinking how lucky my mum, who I and the rest of my family watched the film with, as she stayed off the internet and had not seen any of the trailers. Unsurprisingly, she loved the film. So before Green Goblin can kill Peter, Strange teleports both him and Doc Ock to his man cave, where it's revealed Strange has already tussled with and captured the Lizard from the Amazing Spider-Man 1 film. Now, the Lizard illustrates one of my issues with the film. There were just too many villains to give all of them a fair due, and Lizard suffers the most from this, but at least his character was consistent with the original film, unlike a certain someone, who I will get to shortly. So Strange reveals that because Peter wouldn't shut up during his spell, people who know Peter Parker is Spider-Man are coming through into their universe, and he sends Peter off to deal with the Goblin. However, Peter instead comes across Electro and Sandman. Sandman, who was on good terms with his universe's Spider-Man, helps Peter defeat Electro. However, once Peter teleports Electro away, Sandman turns on him, mistaking the teleportation for murder. Now, I personally take issue with how Sandman is presented in this film, as his initial introduction is very good, but it's never really explained why he decides to team up with the villains, especially as teaming up with Peter would be in his best interest since he wants to go back to his universe to see his own daughter. Oh well, Sandman did always strike me as a bit of a dunce. Finally, Peter gets a call from Aunt May saying that Willem Dafoe has walked into her soup kitchen. Peter races to the scene to find the friendly Norman Osborn, who is no longer in his goblin mode and is just scared and wants to see his son. Willem Dafoe is exceptional in this film and is able to easily convey whether he is the kind Norman who generally wants to help, or the evil maniacal goblin who wants nothing more than to destroy everything in his path. Peter takes Norman to the other villains where Doc Ock reveals that Norman is dead, only for Sandman to reveal the same thing about Otto Octavius. Electro reveals he knows about Lizard Man, causing the lizards to then inquire about his own mortality. Doctor Strange doesn't care and just wants to send them back to their universe, which doesn't sit right with Peter, who then steals the box that will send them back, leading to a glorious fight between Doctor Strange, which in my opinion bests the mirror dimension fight from the original Doctor Strange film. Anyway, to my actual surprise, Spider-Man beats Doctor Strange and leaves the wizard trapped in the mirror dimension without his ring. I'm not sure how everyone else feels, but I feel like Strange should have just one-shot Spider-Man, or whatever. So Peter takes the villains to Happy's house and with Norman's help gets to work on fixing them. They start with Dr. Octopus since his should be the easiest to solve and create an inhibitor chip which should give Otto full control of his tentacles again, which it does. Now initially I wasn't a fan of how Doc Ock was treated in this film, as he's the butt of a lot of jokes. But as soon as the chip is placed on his neck, the jokes stop, and it was wonderful to see Alfred Molina play the gentleman that is Otto. Now returned to normal, Otto helps with Peter and Norman. However, everyone goes ballistic once the Green Goblin comes out, and Peter goes toe-to-toe with Willem Dafoe, who just maniacally cackles as he actually dominates most of the fight. And then in an extremely shocking moment, the Goblin sends his glider flying into Aunt May, which ultimately kills her, but not before the Green Goblin escapes and May says the infamous line, "With great power comes great responsibility." Now I'm going to be honest with you guys, May's death fell completely flat for me, due to numerous reasons. The primary reason being that I don't care about Aunt May, or at least this version of her. She's never felt like an important part of the MCU Spider-Man films, more of an afterthought who was there because Aunt May plays a big role in the comics. She's not even a secondary character in these films. Heck, I'm being generous referring to her as a tertiary one, due to how little time was put into developing her character. It also doesn't help that the PlayStation 4 Spider-Man game did this scene a whole lot better, and this scene doesn't hold a candle to Uncle Ben's death in the original Spider-Man. In fact, I think the Amazing Spider-Man did this scene better. Also, it might just be me, but the CGI of the glider hitting May wasn't the best. So Peter runs off, leaving the cold corpse of May in the rubble. Meanwhile, MJ and Ned are debating whether to send all of the villains back to their universe, when Ned, who is wearing Doctor Strange's ring, almost opens a portal when thinking about Peter. MJ tells Ned to do it again, as they might be able to find Peter. Fortunately, Ned is able to open the portal, and they see Spider-Man standing in an alleyway. They call out to him, and he comes running towards them, only for them, and us, to realise that this isn't their Spider-Man. This Spider-Man pulls his mask off to reveal that it is actually Andrew Garfield. Now my cinema erupted when this happened. Everyone was screaming and clapping, and Andrew just slides back into the role as if it was nothing. If it wasn't for Willem Dafoe, then I would say that Andrew Garfield was the MVP of this film, as he instantly reminds everyone of why he was such a good choice for Spider-Man. After convincing them that he is indeed Spider-Man, Ned then decides to try finding Peter again. Man, the execution of bringing both Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire into this film was just truly excellent. Both Spider-Men received equal amounts of cheer, and I was excited seeing both of them. Also, Tobey and Andrew had great chemistry, and the next scene where the three Spider-Men meet is truly amazing. Tom Holland is great, he's grieving over the death of Aunt May and wants nothing more than to send them back to their own universe. Fortunately, Tobey and Andrew are able to convince him otherwise, with Tobey acting like the wise old man who has completed his Spider-Man journey, whilst Andrew is the Spider-Man still haunted by the fact that he failed to save Gwen Stacy all those years ago. Both wish to prevent Peter from experiencing the same regret that has plagued their lives. The three men then work together to cure all the villains, minus Doc Ock. Now here's another issue with the film. They're all just able to do it. Now curing Lizard makes sense since Andrew did it in the original film, but Goblin and especially Sandman and Electro feels a tad contrived, but since the film is so much fun, I'll let it slide. Peter then calls all the villains to the Statue of Liberty for the final fight, and the plan instantly goes awry as the Spider-Men keep getting in each other's way, but they do manage to sort themselves out and decide to focus on one villain at a time. They start with Sandman, and then to Lizard, and as Lizard is turning human, Doctor Strange returns back to the film after such a long time away from the screen, clearly very angry with Peter, but mellows out once he sees the plan is working. As Electro is frying the other Spider-Men, Doc Ock returns to the scene, pretending to be evil, only to defeat Electro and return him to normal. I love the scene where Doc Ock and Tobey converse, as it was great to see the two finally have a sane, peaceful conversation after so long of fighting together. All looks right as rain until the Green Goblin shows up, destroying Strange's box and causing the multiverse to begin to collapse. Additionally, MJ falls off the Statue of Liberty, and Peter is stopped by the Green Goblin, causing Andrew to jump after her and save her life. A visibly emotional Andrew, clearly reminded of Gwen's death, then puts MJ down and watches on with Tobey as Peter beats down on the Goblin. Peter then picks up the goblin and goes to kill the goblin, only for Toby to stop him. He's not getting out of the way of the glider this time. Peter, allowing his rage to subside, puts down the glider, only for the green goblin to stab Toby in the back. Now this moment made everyone's heart stop, as for a second it looked like they were genuinely going to kill off Toby. In a smart move, they don't, and instead Peter injects Norman with the antidote, whilst Andrew makes sure Toby is alright. However, Doctor Strange is struggling to close the multiverse, and Peter decides to make the ultimate sacrifice. Strange will cast a spell, causing everyone to forget who Peter Parker is. Strange, who is actually hesitant, agrees, allowing Peter to say goodbye to MJ and Ned in the scene that Zendaya is creating. Peter runs off, and Strange completes the spell, sending Toby, Andrew, and the villains back to their universe, where none of them will die. Except for Doc Ock, who will still have to sink the sun into the ocean. At least maybe when Norman returns, he'll be able to prevent Otto from creating the tentacles, or at least creating another inhibitor chip. Peter then visits the coffee shop where MJ works and says hello, but in the end decides to just order a coffee, instead of revealing the truth to her, although Zendaya is great in conveying that MJ is still attracted to Peter in the scene, as she keeps looking at him and even brushes her hair behind her ear. Peter then visits Aunt May's grave, which should have next been one that said Ben Parker if you ask me, and he talks to Happy, who also doesn't recognise him. It's revealed that Peter is now renting a place, and has made his own Spider-Man suit. The film ends with Spider-Man swinging through New York. Man, what a good film. Believe it or not, I actually wasn't too happy when I left the cinema. Yeah, I enjoyed the film, but it didn't live up to my expectations, which were pretty high, so, that's my own fault. However, as the days have passed, my opinion on the film has become more and more positive. I keep remembering the great reveals and the great acting, especially from Tom Holland, who gives his best performance to date as Spider-Man, Willem Dafoe, who, he's Willem Dafoe, and Andrew Garfield, who I hope gets to return to the character again. Either make The Amazing Spider-Man 3, or just put him in the next Venom film or something, please. Is this the best Spider-Man film? I don't know. Too early to tell. I need to rewatch this film, the original Raimi films, and the Into the Spider-Verse again to make up my mind. Right now though, if you ask me, Into the Spider-Verse is still probably my favourite. Overall, I think this film lived up to the hype, even though it took me a while to realise that, somehow, and delivered the best ending of any Spider-Man film to date, in my opinion. I don't have anything else to say on the film. Please consider liking and subscribing. I hope to see you all next time. Bye bye.